Hilchas Shvisas Yom Tov, Perik Sheni. A freach shenelad b'Yom Tov, osur mipnei shehu muktzah. It says when it came Yom Tov, so you weren't allowed to eat this a freach because in a freach before it was nelad has a din of a sheretz. So mele it's osur to eat. So it has a din of muktzah. This issue Rashi says that an a freach shenelad b'Yom Tov is nelad, which is similar to the din of muktzah, but he says it's noilad. The Rambam doesn't mention noilad. So a beit shenel de Yom Tov is called neilad because it was originally part of the beit of the Tanagelis, which is a live thing. So now when it comes out of Tanagelis, it's like a new thing. Was neilad. Mashenken this freach shenelad Yom Tov was just covered by a shell. It wasn't really like part of a live bird. So Memela, so therefore, I says the Rambam doesn't hold that it has a gather of noilad, just a gather of muktzah, because the pale wasn't royal achil. I'll call upon him. Either way, it's aser. Afreach shenelad b'Yom Tov aser mipnei shehu muktzah. Ve'egel shenelad b'Yom Tov im hoise im meyemedes lachila is muter mipnei shehu muchen agav imei. Ve'ilu shachat imei. So in other words, this egel, while it was part of the mother, so if its mother was oimed lachila, so then the egel was part of the mother, and Mela was also part of the oimed lachila. If the parah was not oimed lachila, it was oimed lachrisha. So Mela the parah you wouldn't be allowed to shecht on Yom Tov. So who adin this egel, which was nailed on Yom Tov, was also be also. Halacha Beis, the Halacha Gimel. V'chein behemas kotshim, shenolad b'mum b'Yom Tov, hoyel v'lehoysa daiti olam erev Yom Tov, also l'shachta b'Yom Tov. So, since it's again a din of muktzah, since it was kotshim, and there became a mum on Yom Tov. So even if it's a mum which justifies being able to kshech the behema, but nevertheless, on Yom Tov, when it came to Yom Tov, it was muktzah. Lefichach also liris mumi kotshim b'Yom Tov, gzeir shema yatilim hachachim b'muman, v'yovi zel lishchit b'y. And that would be a problem of muktzah. So from the Rambam says clearly that the problem is only a problem of muktzah. Notice for the chacham to see the mum, the problem is that you may go ahead and shecht it, and then it was muktzah. But the Rashi and the Alter Rebbe writes that there's another problem. Kotshim, even if it had a mum, and it was a real mum, it's not really mutter until the Chacham sees it and is mattered. So Mela comes out when the Chacham is going to see this mum on Yom Tov, there's not only a problem that you're going to be shechting this carbon, and this carbon it was really muktzah. The etzem seeing of the behema and being mattered is a masakin, and that's Asr on Yom Tov. That's another Isra on Yom Tov. But the Rambam speaks about the Isra of Muktzah. Avol reyes hamum erev Yom Tov, ulemacher mater yeser. If the Chacham saw it on erev Yom Tov, so Mele you already had daiti olah. And if the Chacham really had, if he saw it and he came to the conclusion that it was a mum, so even though he wasn't mater it yet, because he has to be mavar, if the mum was made biyodayim, so then it's also. Masha'in, if it wasn't made biyodayim, then it's mutter. So that's only a question of the Chacham being mavar the inyan, and it's also there's no tikkun. Even if you're going to hold that it's a problem of tikkun, there's no problem of tikkun because the Chacham really some knew on erev Yom Tov that there was a mum. There's only a question is he didn't know this mum will be matter because maybe it was put there deliberately. So therefore, b'kitzur, if the Chacham saw the mum on erev Yom Tov, even though he was only matter it on Yom Tov, so it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's not muktzah because your das was on it. And there's no problem also mitzad masakim, which Ram doesn't even speak about because it's not really masakim. Now, what happens if you knew about the mum on erev Yom Tov and you showed it to the chacham on Yom Tov? So if you're worrying about masakim, so obviously that would be a problem. But even if you're worrying about muktzah, so there's a gzeira because Shema you're going to show it. Maybe you'll show it, the chacham a mum that was nailed be Yom Tov. So Mela, the gzeira is that you're not allowed to show a mum to a chacham on Yom Tov. So we learned that you're not allowed to be b'chlal roya a mum on Yom Tov, and also if you are roya a mum on Yom Tov, a mum that was noilad a mum that was nailed on Yom Tov, so you're not allowed to use it. And even if it was nailed on Erev Yom Tov, but if the Chacham didn't see it on Erev Yom Tov, so you're not allowed to use it on Yom Tov. That's the din. Now, B'cher, Shenela the Muma Imei, Hareza Muchan. If it was nailed with a mum, it's Muchan. But on the other end, they Mavaknesa Yom Tov. Now, since it was not, because it was Muchan already Agavima. In other words, if you had a B'cher that was nailed Erev Yom Tov and had a mum, so and the Chacham didn't see it, so it's Muktzah. Masha'inkin, you can, when it comes Yom Tov, you're not allowed to use it. Masha'inkin, if it was nailed on Yom Tov, it was nailed the Mumma, so it was already Muchan Agavime. But on the other end, there's a general din that Eima Vakar Nesa Yom Tov. Abivim Ovar, Vero Mumay, Ubikre Vehitire. So Harez a Sheikhet Veichel. Why? Because Sof Kol Sof, it was never Muktzah. It wasn't Muktzah. Now, this din, the Rambam says, is in a case where it was Noilad Umumei Imei. Now, the truth is that after it was Noilad Umumei Imei, it really did become Muktzah. Because Lepel, in that matzav, you're not allowed to use it. You're only allowed to use it if the Chacham was Materit, and the Chacham is not allowed to be Materit. You're not allowed to really bring it to the Chacham, and he should be Materit. But Lepel, if you brought it to the Chacham and he was Materit, so Lepel, it became Mutter. It's Muktzah. It's not Muktzah because it became Muktzah during Shabbos, during Yom Tov. But Erev Yom Tov, when it was Nichlas Yom Tov, it wasn't Muktzah. Now, who adin? What happens if it was Neilad or Aramum? So again, it was Neilad or Aramum, so it's Muktzah. And now it was Neilad by Mum, and now Chacham saw it, and it was Materit. So the Alter Rebbe writes that would be the same din, because Sofkos of the Nekudas Advarim is that when it came Yom Tov, it was Mutter Agav Imei. So even though during Yom Tov there was a matzav that it was usher to use, but now since that matzav changed, the Mamela goes back to its heter. Others learn differently. That's what the Be'er Halacha, the Be'eri says differently. But Lepel, that's how the Alter Rebbe Paskins and the Pri Chodesh Paskins. There's nothing. Let's read inside. B'cher shenelad umumei imei is hareza muchan. There's no problem of muktzah. But on the other end, ema vaknesa b'yantiv. You're not allowed to really check it on yantiv. Aber v'im avar v'ro mumei ubikrei v'hitirei is hareza sheichet v'echel. B'cher shenafal leber eisnelei parnosibim kemei. Shari eni yochel alesim mipnei sheini roy l'shchita b'yantiv. So it's muktzah. So you're not allowed to be calculate. And you can't shech them both. So as Milas Arish Namanas L'Shachte. You have in mind you're going to shech it. Maybe you'll shech it. You say, well, first I'm thinking of shechting the mother. And you bring the mother up. And then you say, well, I'm not really sure if I'm going to shech the mother. Maybe I'll shech the ben. And now, once that both of them are out, the sheikhet ezmem shirtza, mishum tsar balichayim mitiru laharim, even though it's really haram. Behem is chul and shnafel min agag, and the din is that it's a suffix treifa, so it has to be omda meis liyes, and then after it's omda meis liyes, so then it needs to be beidig because there's a chash of maybe nisraskei v'rel. So the din is behem is chul and shnafel min agag, va'omda meis liyes. It's from this we can shake the nese b'yantiv v'tibadi because efshe shetimotzik sheira v'tiyochel. Not a problem. Avzin v'tarnagelim v'yenim shebebayis. This is poultry that lives in the house. Is harei lemuchanim beinam tzrichan zimun. Aval yoyni shevach v'yoyni aliyah. The pigeons that are in the pigeon coop and on the yoyni aliyah are the v'tziporim shekinanu b'tapicham. That's special, like a piece of cheres that they make their nests in. Oy bebira bepardes on a high. A bira is like a high rooftop, or in a pardes is harei lemuktzah and v'tzarich lezaman. So you have to prepare it. Because it has to have zimun. If it's not zimun, it's muktzah. V'tzarich lezaman be'alev v'leimer elu ve'elu aninetel abevein tzarich lenaneh. The zimun doesn't involved in actually touching it, giving it a shakal, which is the shita b'shamai. But over here, all you have to do is elu ve'elu on the natal, and then it becomes muchar. So it's nachamo. It's absent b'tani gelim b'yenim shebebayis is don't need achon. Mashenki yene shevach yene aliyah tziporim shekila b'tapichim or in a beer in a pardes they need achon. What's the achana? The achana is that elu ve'elu on the natal. Zimin shcherim ulevanim, umotza shcherim became levanim, ulevanim became shcherim. There was black birds and white birds, and he was mizamin both of them. But now the white birds are where the black birds were, and the black birds are where the white birds were. So harei lo asurim shani yemer shema eson shazimin parchulam. Because it's possible that the white ones went to where the black ones were, and the black ones went where to the white ones were. But on the other end, it's possible that they both left, and new birds came, and these birds aren't b'chlal, the same birds that he was mizamen. Shaniyim Shema Isen Shaziman Parchulam Ve'elu Acherimim. And the rule is v'chol sofik muteros. So the halacha is that it has to be muchan, it shouldn't be muktzah. And if it's a sofik, it was muchan, it's also. Ziman Shnayim Umatzu Shleisha is akil aser, because there's one of them that wasn't muchan. Shleisha Umatzu Shnayim, so it's mitarim, because we assume that one of the three went away. So these two are the two that were muchan. Ziman Mitech Hakan Umatzu Lefnei Hakan. So im ein sham bekan Elohim ve'enon yechelon lefreach is aval pi sheyeshon kam acher beken zovis b'teit chamishim amma. But the Ken Zovis is a place where you can't see, the place where you found the bird now, you can't see where the Khan, which is Beken Zovis. So in order for the bird to have gotten here, he would have had to go across or straight from his Khan and turn left or turn right, whatever it is. Whereas he would have to turn. He wouldn't be able, he would turn to a place where he can't see the Khan. So the rule is that a bird that's not Pireach doesn't go away from his Khan more than 50 amma, that's number one. And even those 50 amma is straight. Straight means that he's able to see the Khan wherever he goes. He won't go to a place where he won't be able to see the Khan. So that's his thing with it. Is aval b'sheyeshon kamacher b'keren zovis b'tei chamishim amma. Why? Because when a bird is being medada, he's not flying, he's only being medada. So then he always goes straight with his kan. He won't go to a place which is not his kan. So if you have a bird here, you have the frech here, you have the bird here that you were you have the kan that you were mizaman over there, the bird, and you have this bird which is near the Khan, within 50 amos of the Khan, and there's no other Khan that this bird could possibly be, unless it's the Khan of the Keren Zovis, and the bird had to turn corners, which he wouldn't have done. So therefore, we understand that this bird is the one that he was mizama. Halacha Zayin. Dogim shebebibrim g'delim, v'chen chay v'ev shebebigrim g'delim, kol shu mechuser tzeda, at she'emrim hove mitzuda unitzudenu, is a reza muktzah, vein tzodin eisen b'yontif. So in other words, you're not allowed to be tzod, these dogim or these chay v'ev, not mitzad the iser of tzeda. Because l'chura you could say, listen, tzeda is the chadav she'ef shel aseisim erev yontif, and meil it's also aseisim b'yontif. But the Maisa is that Alter Rebbe brings that's not called the davar she'ef shel aseisim erev yontif, because lav dafki a person's matzliach to be tzod. Tzod is something you have to be matzliach to be tzod. So in Mela, so it doesn't necessarily go to the category of davar she'ef shel aseisim erev yontif. But on the other hand, it's muktzah because you didn't have it. So since you didn't have it, so therefore you can't be tzodit because you're taking something that's muktzah. V'im tzod le'yachelu. That's only if it's something which is davar tzarech tzeda. Aber v'chol shein tzarech mitzuda is a reza muchan v'tzod neise b'yontiv echel neise because it's not muktzah and there's no tzeda. V'chen chaya shekinuna bepardes asamuch le'ir is yiladeh kshen ktanim shenam sichon tzeda. So in other words, since it's in the pardes samuch le'ir, and they're yilodim which einam tzrichon tzeda, so in they're considered muchanim. B'pnei shadaiti alei. Mitzudas chay ve'efes v'dogim sheparsam erev yontiv is le'yitel mem yontiv elam ken yidea shenit tzedam erev yontiv. Like we learned that there's a isser, there has to be something that was muchan, and if it's a suffix muchan, it's aser. Hasoicher amas hamayim erev yontiv. So you have an amas hamayim, like a canal of water, and you close it up and you let the water flow out. But on the other end, the fish are going to remain. So that when you, by putting it down there, you already would sud all the dogim. It's only a question of the water coming out, but basically the dogim were already nitzad. So therefore, it's not considered. It's considered that it was already mucham merev yontiv. Nachmo. Hasecher amasamayim. You're closing up this amasamayim merev yontiv, so the fish can't come out. Ulamacher hishkim amatzah badogim, because the water you left that the water should be able to flow out, but not the fish. No, you just left a little bit space on the bottom for the water to flow out. Is arela mutarim shvar and it say the merev yontiv arei muchan. Bayis shumoli peiris muchanim. V'nifchas, you have a closed house, you can't get into it, and the peiris of is peiris muchanim, but they're not accessible because of the house. And v'nifchas is noitel mimokim abchas. So the place where it was broken, or the house got broken, so to speak. Mela, now you have access to this food. So since the food betzim was muchan, even though the peil wasn't available because of the house, so that's not considered not muchan. That's not considered muktzah. And since the peil was the food be'etzim was available, even though the peil you weren't able to have access to it, and now all of a sudden on Yom Tov something happened which gave you an ability to have access to it, so that's not a problem of muktzah. Muktzah means a place where you're drying, like you're drying figs, or you're drying raisins, whatever. That's what muktzah means. Shakala paid as hefker, so therefore there's no problem of meiser. Is tzarich sheyirshing v'yemer. In other words, mikan vatkan ani netel. It's not just enough to say I want to take some tomorrow. You have to be very specific. Mikan vatkan ani netel. Where in these prayers you want to be netel? V'im le'rosham is le'ital. Just by the fact that you said you're going to be netel, that's not enough. You have to you have to be rosham. In other words, earlier we said that by the bird, Rishim sounds like also you have to actually do something. You have to maybe actually do something to be Rishim. I'm not sure. Because before we learned that, by the birds, you don't have to be Munanea. All you have to do is saying Elu Ani Neitlim. But over there you're saying Elu, the specific ones. So Bam Tesus says Beitza, that Lechura over there, you didn't have to be Rishim. Over here, you have to be Rishim. So there, Tesus is saying over there, since over here, Be'etzem, you were maktzid b'yadayim, by making it graders. So, by drying it, and it wasn't royal achila. So over here, in order for it to become muchan, needs more. Lashna Rambam, it's not so clear whether you actually have to do something. In other words, so or Yershim means like, I'm not sure the word. Maybe Yershim actually means you should be Rishim, because Yershim v'yemar, mikan vatkan ani netel. Not sure. Let's read it again. Halacha test. Bayis shumoli peiris muchanim v'nivchas noitel mimikem abchas. Ha'imad al amuktzim erev yontiv b'shana shviya shekol ha'peiris hefker. Valderes, the Maggid Mishnah says, if it'll be a regular year and it was already you took meiser, it's tzarich sheyemar v'yemar mikan vatkan ani netel. You should be yirshem v'yemar mikan vatkan ani netel. Imli rosham le'yit. Halacha yud. Goy shehevit shudel yisrael b'yontiv. Im yesh meis yamin b'mechuber lekarka, a shehevi chaya efes idogim, which is efshel et sudam beibayeng. So it's a suffix. Maybe they weren't muchan on erev yontiv. When it came yontiv, is arelu asurim ad la'erev v'yam b'chlish yasu. Afilo hodas ukietze bei eini mariach bei la'erev ad sheyamtim b'chlish yasu. So in other words, anything that there's a possibility that maybe it was attached, and now you're using it, it wasn't muchan, so the din is you're now going to use it until the erev, and you have to wait b'chlish yasu. So then, is mutter. Is mutal Yisrael lacher. So knows if the guy did it, it was mechuber lekarka, so it doesn't make a difference who he brought it for. The pale wasn't muchad, so no one's allowed to use it. Masha'enkin, if it was brought mechutz l'tchum for a certain yid, so that yid that it was brought for is not allowed to use it on Yom Tov. But another yid is allowed to use it. Halacha yud aleph. Eitzim shenoshu min hadekel b'Yom Tov. So again, it's Asur Lasikim, is again, it's a din of Muktzah. They were, here is more than, it wasn't just Muktzah, it was Nela, because first there was Eitzim that were attached to the tree, and now there's Eitzim which are detached. So here there's a special heter, Mar Baleim Eitzim Muchanim Umasika. So even though normally the din is a Mavat Lissel Lechatchila, and also this is a Davar Sheyesh Lematir, because it's mutter on after Yom Tov. But nevertheless, Mitzat Simchas Yom Tov, you're allowed to be marba, you could be marba on it, and it'll become like that'll become bottle, and you're masik and esim b'mkim. Now this heter of marba leim esim muchanim umasikon, so the Alter Rebbe is masber that the heter is first it's eser d'Rabbanan, and it's also you're not being nana from the gufa eships. The gufa esh is going into the tafshel, then you're being nana from the tafshel. But if you if wood would become detached from a tree, and now you're going to be marbala eitzim, you're going to be nana directly from the fire. You can be mischam for the fire. Then it would taka be aser, because it's muktzah and it's a davar sheyesh matirin. So memeli you're now allowed to use it over here, since it's a isa d'Rabbanan, and it's also you're not being nana directly from the gufa fire, so therefore it's mutter. Aremus teven. If you have a pile of teven which is mukhan for eating, or v'oitza shel eitzim, which is also mukhan for fire, but on the other end it's not for now. It's v'oitza shel eitzim. It's for later. Is ein maschilim ben biyontiv elim kein heichem b'erev. So it's a chiddush that even though these eitzim are l'chura mukhan ultimately for fire, but over here they're not mukhan to be used today. They weren't yet started. So then it's asur. Mipnei shein muktzah. That's all derech. That's the chiddush on Yom Tov. There's a concept called muktzah, which is more than on Shabbos. That's what we learned earlier. So this teven is not roy lachil; it's only leish. So then it's a much. Halacha yud beis. Ein mavaken eitzim misaver shel keres mipnei shein muktzah. If you have like a row of beams, those beams are not going to be used for firewood. The beams are intended to be used for building. Again, mipnei shein neilat. V'chein kelim shenishbaru b'yontiv ein masikin b'hem mipnei shein neilat. So kelim shenishbaru b'yontiv on Shabbos you're allowed to use as long as they're able to do me'in malacha. Masha'inkin on Yontiv you can't be masikin b'hem. Why? Mipnei shein neilat. Ava masikin b'kelim shleimim, because kelim shleimim are muchan. Oy b'kelim shenishbaru b'yontiv, because since oy b'kelim shenishbaru me'erev Yontiv, I'm sorry. If they were nishbur me'erev Yontiv, shari hukmer l'mlacha acheres me'erev. So since on erev Yontiv they were already aimed for something else, so therefore they're considered much. Ki yitzaboi a gezim ushkedim she'achlam erev Yontiv is masikim b'klipayim b'Yontiv. Why? Because the klipas became already muchan. Aber v'im achlam b'Yontiv ein masikim b'klipayim. So there's the klipas who a gezim is similar to the shivrei of a keli. Just like by a keli, the shvarim, if it was nishbar on erev Yontiv, it's mutter, but as nishbar on Yontiv, it's aser. So al that the klipas ha'gezim, if you ate it on erev Yontiv, so it became muchan. But if you ate it on Yontiv, it's not muchan. And it says v'yesh nuschoy sheyesh b'am fakert shemachal mi'ba'erev ein masikim b'klipayim. Why shari huktzum? V'im achlam b'Yontiv is masikim mipnei shein muchan magabi yechol. In those on erev Yontiv, since you ate it, and now all you have is klipas, so the klipas are muktzah. You have no intention of doing anything with these klipas. And you didn't have intention of using the klipas for firewood. Masha'inkin, if you have, the klipas were part of the food, the klipas were covering the food, so then it wasn't muktzah, it was muchan agav the food. So now that it became klipas, so in Mela, it's still retained its heter. It's stayed its heter. Yeah. Halacha Yud Gimel. Kates rotuv. Harei muktzah mipnei she'ein roi la'asaka. In other words, you have a thorn that's wet, so you can't use it for asaka. So lefichach asur le'laseisik mishpud litzlis be'basar v'chein kol gates was that. Let's say you want to make it that it should be like a spit to hold meat. So that would be asur because this l'chatchila it's something which is not muchan. Noitlin eitzim asmuchim l'dofnei asuka umasikin b'hem. Because they're considered muchan, they're samuch l'dafnei asukah. Aval ein marvian eitzim and asada. Afilo hayim b'chunasim shamay ba'erev. You can't bring eitzim and asada and use it for firewood. Aval megavevu b'sadim b'lefonim v'madlik sham. If you're sitting in the field, so there's a special heter to gather the around you, megavevu b'sadim b'lefonim, to gather the eitzim around you and your madlik sham. So nachamol. To take eitzim, which is samuk l'dafni sukkah, you're allowed to. But you can't bring eitzim and asada because that's considered muktzah. And even if they were mechumasim sham ba'erev, but you didn't have in mind to bring it from there, so memela it's considered muktzah. But even though it's considered muktzah, but if you're in a field, and so you're allowed to gather the eitzim which are around you. So there's something that was in a sada, so mechunasim sham ba'erev you can't because it's not muchan. But if it was mechunasim in a rishus hayachid, then it's muktzah. Afilo haisam mukefa shleil shem dira. Bilvad sheyehele pisachas. There's three. First of all, it has to be a place that's mukaf. It's a place that's mukaf, and there's a door to it. There's a door you open and close, and v'tia b'teich tchum Shabbos. So that's the three conditions. It has to be a mukaf. It doesn't have to be mukaf l'shem dira, but it has to be a mukaf, and it has to have a pisachas, a door, and it also should be b'teich tchum Shabbos. V'mchosed echer mikolei lo arin muktzah. Ali kanim ali kfanim aval b'shem mechunasim b'karfev. Abekiven sharuach mefazeres esam says harein k'mefuzarim v'asurim. No, they're not considered muchan. Meniach aleim keli covered nerev yontif, so then it's harein muchan. Halacha tezayin behema shemeisa b'yontif. Im hoisem sukenes me'erev yontif is hareze mechatchol leklovim. V'im lav hail v'li hoise daiti oleo harehu muktzah, and therefore v'lei zizanim am kemo. So you have a behema that was meisa b'yontif, and it was oimid la'adam. So even though it was oimid la'adam, so and if it wouldn't have died, you would be able to take the behema and shecht it. But the pale, it wasn't oimid l'klovim. So mele legabi l'klovim, it's called muktzah. Even though it was oimid la'adam, but legabi klovim, it's called muktzah. So if it was mesukenes, so you had daiti l'klovim, you could use it on yontiv l'klovim. But if it wasn't mesukenes and it wasn't daiti l'klovim, you could not use it l'klovim. It's not considered noilad because sof kol sof, it was originally a behemoth. Now it's still a behemoth. It doesn't have a din of noilad, even though it was mesa. Masha'inkin, it's a question of muktzah. It's a din of muktzah. That even something that was mukhan for one thing, it's muktzah for another thing. Yeah. Behemoth's kotchim shemesa. So in other words, if a regular behemoth was mesa b'yontiv, so if it was a mesukenes, you're allowed to be metaltal because you had das. Masha'inki and a behemoth's kotchim shemesa. So even if it was a mesukenes, it needs pidyon. And memela. So right now it's in a matzav of kotchim of muktzah. Al there is a too much nitmas. You have nothing to use with it, and therefore there is zanimum came. Allah Yudzayin. Dogim v'oifeis. I mean, trumashim nitmas mistam. You could burn it really sometimes if it's oil, but you didn't have das for it to become tamei. So mele, it's muktzah. Dogim v'oifeis v'chaya shehin muktzah. Is ein mashken esam b'yontiv beinesen lefneim zenis. Why? Because Shema Yavi Likach Mem, because you may end up using them. Because if you're going to feed them, you may end up using them. And you're not allowed to use them because the muktzah. Muktzah is also a solitaltali. Hamachnis offer me'erev yontiv, v'michle b'chatzei keren zovis, harei ze muchan, umutel letaltali, v'lasis b'kol tzrachav, with this offer. V'chein efer shehusak me'erev yontiv, is considered mukhan. If you have ashes that came from fire that was burned on Yom Tov, it's called mashucham kedei lislish beitza is mutal letaltle because adayin this ashes have a din of eshu. Abivim lav also letaltle meshu neilad. It was first a piece of wood, then you burned it, and now it's ashes. It's sanayazach. Misha hoyeli decker notes me'erev Yom Tov. You had a spade stuck into the ground erev yontiv, v'nitke b'yontiv, and you picked it up on yontiv v'hela offer. Im hoya oisa offer tochuach, because it's offer which is sand, which is crumbled sand, is arim is a mechase be'metaltli. So then it's you could be mechaset. Avalam hella gush offer is arezel yichte sheisi b'yontif. Now the Rambam doesn't really write clearly that you're allowed to be menatik on yontif. Misha oyel decker notes made of yontif. The nitke out of yontif hella offer. Now the question is, are you allowed to do this lechatchila? Are you allowed to do this lechatchila? So l'chura from Pashas Gemara comes out that you're allowed to, according to Beis Hillel, you're allowed to shecht, and as long as you have a decker notes, you're allowed to. From the Rambam, it sounds like it's a b'diavad. So they bring that maybe it depends if you hold melacha shein tzricha l'guf as chayiv or potter, because when you know it's a decker and you take it out of the ground, l'chura, whether or not it's deima l'melacha is totally a melacha shein tzricha l'gufa, because you're Chefer gumavein and tzarech alafrin. The Rambam passes melacha shein tzricha l'guf as chayiv. So therefore, the heter of picking up the decker is not as easy, according to the Rambam, as if you hold melacha shein tzricha l'guf as potter. And therefore, the Rambam seems to be saying that this din is only b'diavad.